Back up! Pepper spray, just pepper spray.
Protesters usually get a chance to speak up for their rights.
We need to change the system. We need burners to rise up.
But sometimes the police don't let them do it peacefully. Or sometimes even the protesters go wild. In today's video, I am going to show you just that. Number 1, POTUS. Demonstrators gathered outside the Summit of the Americas in downtown Los Angeles. The summit, attended by President Joe Biden, aimed to build cooperation across the Western Hemisphere on issues such as the economy and more. However, controversy arose due to Biden's decision not to invite leaders from Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. As President Biden's motorcade approached the LA Convention Center, tensions escalated when a protester was tackled by police. The video shows the protester being taken down by authorities, emphasizing that unauthorized access to certain areas would not be tolerated. You can see the police officer acting quickly and taking the woman down. It's like he's saying, "Not today, buddy." The protester, however, tried her best to fight back, but well, that's just not how things work. Number 2, drag protest. A protest outside a drag event in Fort Worth, Texas, when clashes started between counter-protesters and members of the group Protect Texas Kids. Authorities reported that the violence began when a counter-protester allegedly assaulted a member of Protect Texas Kids with what appeared to be pepper spray. This initial act of aggression led to a police intervention, during which Fort Worth officers attempted to arrest the suspect. The situation escalated further as other counter-protesters tried to interfere with the arrest, resulting in additional clashes and the detention of 2 more individuals. Despite the presence of the police, who were there to maintain order and ensure public safety, the situation quickly escalated following the alleged pepper spray incident. The subsequent attempt by police to arrest the suspect was met with resistance from other counter-protesters, leading to more chaos and additional arrests. Number 3, Mexico. On June 4th, 2020, during protests in Jalisco, Mexico, a police officer was set on fire by a demonstrator. The protests were in response to the death of Giovanni Lopez, a 30-year-old man who died in police custody, allegedly for not wearing a face mask amid coronavirus restrictions. A video captured by journalist Mario Marlo shows the moment when a masked protester poured a flammable liquid on the back of a police officer who was sitting on his motorcycle and then set him alight. The officer and part of his bike were engulfed in flames, causing him to fall to the ground. Other officers quickly surrounded him, trying to extinguish the flames while keeping back the protesters. Right after that happened, the protester who set fire to the police officer was arrested. You can see him trying to free himself in the clip as well. The incident quickly went viral on social media. During the protest, several police vehicles were set on fire, and a protester reportedly took a police officer's rifle and threw it into a burning vehicle. A total of 26 people were arrested. Enrique Alfaro, the governor of Jalisco, confirmed that the officer was injured along with 5 other officers. Number 4, May Day. In 2024, France saw significant May Day rallies, with the CGT and CFDT unions uniting in numerous cities, including Paris. These rallies had diverse slogans advocating for peace, fighting austerity, and calling for a more protective Europe for workers ahead of the EU elections in June. A total of 265 rallies were organized across the country. Pro-Palestinian and anti-Olympics protesters, as well as farmers upset about environmental regulations, joined the rallies. Violence broke out in cities like Lyon and Nantes, resulting in several arrests and injuries. In Paris, 25 people were arrested before the parade began, with authorities confiscating weapons. There was a massive clash between the protesters and the police. But clearly, police force had the upper hand. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal and France's unbowed party leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon condemned the violence. The turnout for the rallies was expected to be lower than the previous year's record numbers, which saw significant protests against the controversial pension reform law. Number 5, George Floyd. During protests over George Floyd's killing, the LAPD used force that violated its own policies, causing serious injuries to protesters. Police batons and less lethal munitions were often used improperly, resulting in broken bones, head injuries, and genital trauma. Many protesters were hit at close range and targeted in prohibited areas like the face and groin. The LAPD has launched multiple investigations into these actions, but there's criticism over their initial praise of officer restraint and lack of a comprehensive public accounting of protester injuries. Number 6. Russian police aggression. On January 31st, protests spread across Russia, reflecting widespread dissatisfaction with the government. These protests, fueled by economic and political frustrations, led to an intense crackdown by the police. Reports emerged of officers using electric shocks and physical force against protesters and bystanders alike. The protests showed deep-seated grievances among the Russian population regarding government policies and economic conditions. The police response was severe, resulting in the detention of over 5,000 individuals, marking one of the largest crackdowns on dissent in recent Russian history. Amid the chaos, there were numerous reports of injuries inflicted on protesters and bystanders, illustrating the harsh tactics employed by law enforcement to suppress the demonstrations. Number 7. Hong Kong. In December 2019, there was trouble in Hong Kong during a rally supporting China's Uyghur population. It happened in Central, where protesters clashed with police after taking down the Chinese national flag from a pole at Edinburgh Place. The rally, initially approved by authorities, turned chaotic when riot police arrived to retrieve the flag. Protesters outnumbered the officers, and tensions rose quickly. Things got worse when objects were thrown at police, who responded with batons and pepper spray. A protester allegedly pushed an officer, prompting another to draw his gun as a warning. Fortunately, no shots were fired. More police arrived, dispersing the crowd and detaining over 10 people for bag searches. Earlier that day, hundreds peacefully protested against alleged human rights abuses of Uyghur Muslims in China's Xinjiang region. They gathered near the People's Liberation Army headquarters, advocating for Uyghur rights and some supporting Hong Kong independence. Speakers criticized Beijing and called for Hong Kong's autonomy. Hong Kong's government condemned the rally's independence calls and flag removal, emphasizing stability and unity. Number 8. France. A 26-year-old engineer from Guadeloupe, France, suffered an injury during a protest against Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms in Paris. While documenting the confrontation between protesters and police, he was struck in the groin by a police officer's baton. The force of the blow was so severe that it led to the amputation of one of his testicles, requiring urgent medical treatment and hospitalization. The young man has filed a formal complaint against the officer, accusing him of voluntary violence resulting in mutilation by a person vested with public authority. This incident has triggered widespread public outrage and prompted an investigation by Paris Police Chief Laurent Nunez. The incident has led to many concerns about police conduct in France, where accusations of excessive force and demands for greater accountability are not uncommon. Number 9. Russia. Human Rights Watch documented severe human rights abuses in Russia during recent anti-war protests. This is one them. Thousands of peaceful protesters were arbitrarily arrested across the country. The police used excessive force during arrests and subjected detainees to abuse, amounting to torture and degrading treatment. Reports indicated at least 13,500 arbitrary arrests since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began. The crackdown intensified on March 6th, with about 5,000 people detained in 69 cities. Subsequent protests, including on International Women's Day, also faced police repression. Detainees, including children, reported injuries such as cuts and bruises, and some required hospitalization. Videos and testimonies revealed instances of police brutality, including beatings and the use of electroshock weapons on detainees. In Moscow, for example, a woman was allegedly punched and threatened with violence by police. Reports also described detainees being denied legal representation and subjected to unlawful searches. Authorities targeted journalists and human rights defenders, detaining them without cause. Police raided offices of the Memorial Human Rights Center, symbolically defacing the premises. Human Rights Watch called on Russian authorities to end the crackdown, investigate abuses, and hold perpetrators accountable. These actions violated international human rights norms and freedoms guaranteed by treaties Russia is party to. Number 10. Animal rights. During the Minnesota Timberwolves versus Memphis Grizzlies playoff game on April 23, 2022, at Target Center in Minneapolis, an animal rights activist named Sasha Zemmel caused a disruption. Zemmel ran onto the court wearing a homemade referee jersey with the number 5.3, symbolizing the chickens killed at a factory farm owned by Timberwolves owner Glenn Taylor. She intended to blow a whistle and issue a symbolic penalty against Taylor, one of Minnesota's wealthiest billionaires. Security reacted swiftly as Zemmel approached Taylor's courtside seat, tackling her before she could further disrupt the game. The security guard's quick action was praised on social media for preventing a larger disturbance. Zemmel was detained and spent the night in jail, facing potential charges of fifth-degree assault and disorderly conduct. Another protester sitting with Zemmel was also removed from the game. This incident was the third protest by animal rights activists at Timberwolves games in the past 10 days. Number 11. ICE. During the morning commute, protesters gathered along 2nd Avenue, directly outside a building housing immigration and customs enforcement offices. While peaceful, the protest caused significant disruption to traffic as participants lined the middle of the avenue. Law enforcement responded with a newly deployed apparatus removal team, swiftly intervening to manage the situation. The quick resolution aimed to restore normalcy and minimize further disruption to the morning commute. The critics of ICE's presence at the protest talked about the contentious nature of its activities and their impact on local communities. The incident led to renewed discussions about the role of law enforcement in handling protests and the broader societal debate on immigration policies. The protesters, however, were arrested for causing disruptions. Well, you know, all actions have a reaction. Number 12. Nevada. On August 28, 2023, things got pretty intense in Nevada when police rammed through a blockade set up by climate activists from the group 7 Circles. These activists were protesting the Burning Man festival. Their blockade caused quite a scene, leading to clashes with motorists and tribal rangers and creating a massive traffic jam that stretched for miles. The protesters were blocking the road, and people using the roads have had enough. And before things got worse, police had to get into action and do what was supposed to be done. The police car rammed through the whole setup, and bam, they were done for. The question is, how is a protest considered peaceful when it's clearly disturbing the peace of everyone else? Number 13. Philippine police van. On October 19, 2016, a troubling incident occurred outside the U.S. Embassy in Manila, Philippines. A group of activists was protesting against the U.S. military presence in the country. The protest was organized by Bayan Nation, a left-wing group, and aimed to support President Rodrigo Duterte's call for an independent foreign policy and the withdrawal of U.S. troops from the Philippines. But these protesters were causing serious disruptions. During the protest, a police van driven by Officer Franklin Coe was dispatched to disperse the crowd. In a shocking turn of events, the van began driving wildly forward and backward, plowing into the protesters. This reckless action resulted in several protesters being knocked down and injured. At least 3 people had to be hospitalized, and many more were arrested. Number 14. French riots. On March 28, 2023, protests erupted in Paris and other French cities like Rennes, Bordeaux, and Toulouse against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform bill. The police had clashed, with groups setting fire to garbage cans and throwing projectiles at police, who responded with charges and tear gas. A man was knocked unconscious by a police charge in Paris, an incident captured on live footage that went viral. The government's refusal to suspend and reconsider the pension bill, which raises the retirement age from 62 to 64, fueled the protests. Despite ongoing dialogue, the government remained firm, offering to discuss other topics with unions but not pension reform. Prime Minister Elizabeth Bourne scheduled meetings with unions for the following Monday and Tuesday. Since mid-January, millions have protested and participated in strikes against the bill. The unrest intensified after the government used special powers to pass the bill without a parliamentary vote. While these protests saw less violence compared to previous ones, incidents of vandalism and arson occurred, particularly in Nantes, where a bank branch and a car were set on fire. Protesters in Rennes blocked a ring road and set an abandoned car ablaze, while those in Paris and Marseille briefly obstructed train tracks. Participation in the protests was lower than the peak on March 23rd, with 740,000 people taking to the streets nationwide, down from the record 1.09 million. Number 15, PM Khan. Violence erupted in several Pakistani cities after police arrested former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Supporters of Khan protested his arrest, calling it unfair. Police used tear gas and water cannons to control the crowds, resulting in injuries and chaos. Many protesters were arrested during the clashes. Khan's arrest heightened tension in Pakistan, where people were already upset about election issues and government actions against critics. Authorities worked to calm the situation and manage the protests. Well, that's what you get for disturbing the peace of a city. Number 16. Quetta. In Quetta, Pakistan's southwestern city, tensions escalated when police detained scores of doctors and paramedics who had refused to work in hospitals during the COVID-19 pandemic. The medical workers were adamant that they lacked sufficient protective gear to safely treat coronavirus patients. The situation intensified on April 6, 2020, when police forcefully dispersed a sit-in protest staged by medical staff from Quetta's Civil Hospital and Bolan Medical College. Reports emerged of police using batons to disperse the protesters, leading to injuries and widespread condemnation from medical associations and human rights groups. Number 17. Pulwama. In the Pulwama district of India-administered Kashmir, Indian riot police responded with tear gas and stun grenades against anti-government protesters during a period of heightened tensions in the region. The unrest stemmed from the Indian government's decision to revoke Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which granted Kashmir a degree of autonomy. This move sparked widespread demonstrations across the Kashmir Valley, where thousands voiced their opposition to the changes. Despite imposed curfews and movement restrictions, protesters defied these measures, leading to confrontations with security forces. The 2016 to 2017 Kashmir unrest saw significant casualties, including over 90 civilian deaths and more than 15,000 injuries, with many suffering from permanent injuries due to pellet guns. Human rights organizations and international bodies have consistently criticized the Indian government's approach in Kashmir, urging an end to the use of force against peaceful protesters and advocating for the restoration of democratic freedoms in the region. Number 18. Police brutality. Protesters fled the Portland State University Library on May 2, 2024, as police made arrests during a clearance operation. The library had been occupied by activists opposed to Israel's role in the ongoing war in Gaza, who had been demanding that the university cut ties with companies connected to Israel. The police operation began at 6 a.m., with officers announcing via loudspeaker that they would soon begin removing those inside the library. By 7:50 a.m., police reported charging those inside with second-degree trespass. The operation lasted around 4 hours, during which time police arrested at least 30 people, including 7 PSU students. Protesters attempted to block the police from leaving the area with arrested demonstrators, but police were able to clear the area. The Oregon affiliate of the American Federation of Teachers, which represents over 18,000 college professors and K-12 workers, denounced the police response and expressed support for students and faculty participating in protests against the Israel-Hamas war. Number 19. Minneapolis. On May 30th, 2020, police and protesters clashed in Minneapolis when the city decided to clear barricades on Lake Street in Uptown. Protesters had set up these barricades as a memorial to Winston Smith and Deonna Marie Nidek, who died in a car accident during a George Floyd protest. When the police arrived to clear the area, some protesters threw debris at them. In response, the police used less lethal weapons. The protests had been happening for several days and often turned violent and destructive. Despite a city-imposed curfew, protesters kept gathering, leading to frequent confrontations with law enforcement. Clearing the barricades on Lake Street was a major event in these protests and marked a change in how the city was handling the unrest. Number 20. Raleigh. On May 30th, 2020, protesters and police clashed in downtown Raleigh in response to the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police. The event started peacefully, with hundreds of people gathering to express their outrage over Floyd's death. However, as the night went on, the situation became more violent. Protesters began breaking windows and damaging property, leading to a confrontation with police. Officers in riot gear responded, and the tension escalated. This resulted in several injuries and significant property damage. By the end of the night, police had arrested 12 people involved in the unrest. Local media widely covered the events, highlighting the shift from a peaceful protest to violent clashes and the resulting arrests and damage. In contrast, a separate rally was held in downtown Raleigh to support law enforcement officers. About 300 people attended the Defend the Police rally, which remained peaceful and did not result in any arrests or violence. Thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe for more such videos, like and share to spread awareness, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.